Kids have so many feelings that are so hard to articulate, and it doesn't have to be an experience as extreme as parents going through a divorce. Hello, and welcome to Naturally Inspired. My name is Miss O. I taught kids for almost 20 years, and I'm a staunch believer in raising healthy, empowered, and resilient children. I realized that children are born on a clean slate. Children are loving, they are trusting of others, and trusting of themselves. Until something happens and they start to form these beliefs, expectations, and carry these stories with them. This work also taught me how fragile the human mind is. One thing I never anticipated was that this work would make me sit face to face with my younger self and start to peel back these stories and try to track where they came from. When I was 10 years old, my family went through something really traumatic. This is one of the only vivid memories I have from that age. I remember going to school one day and there was this hallway gossip about a student whose parents were getting divorced. I had never ever heard about parents getting divorced, maybe on TV, but in real life it was not a reality. I distinctly remember thinking, how embarrassing. That's the thought that went through my 10 or 11-year-old mind. I thought that student should be ashamed and embarrassed that his parents were getting divorced. Little did I know that a few weeks down the line, my parents would be telling us that they are getting divorced. Looking back, I feel like hearing that hallway gossip was almost God kind of giving me a little taste of what was coming. I don't know. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but when my parents told us that they were getting divorced, my mind immediately went back to the way I reacted to the news of the other student's parents getting divorced. My parents getting divorced came out of the blue for me. What followed was traumatic. My parents never argued. They never argued in front of us, which is why, it was a real big surprise when that happened. As far as I was concerned, we had a perfect family. But it was traumatic watching my mom break down and go through the emotions of getting divorced. My dad reacted very differently, but of course I could see that he was also going through pain, and I was going through pain, and our family was falling apart. I remember like it was yesterday, laying in my bed, thinking about everything that was going on at home and coming to the conclusion that this is exactly how all relationships end, in pain, in tears. I was around 11 years old and I came to this conclusion. Fast forward to me being a teenager and going into my 20s. I carried this with me and it defined all my relationships. I remember my first year in university, I had this boyfriend. I can't call him a boyfriend because it never got there, but I remember this boy who liked me. I liked him, but I didn't trust him. I didn't even know him that well, but I just couldn't trust him. I just couldn't trust him. And at that age, I was oblivious to why I couldn't trust him. This was one of my defenses. One of my defenses was not trusting and not allowing myself to open up to anyone. Another thing was I was very happy to have long distance relationships. Throughout my 20s, I was very comfortable with long distance relationships. I remember in my early 30s, I was moving from Japan, moving back home, and my bestie said to me, please promise me when you get back home, you're gonna date a guy in the same city. I was doing all of this. This was my defense in order to shield myself from this inevitable ending that I had concluded is the only ending that would happen for me. This is how I shielded myself from getting hurt. I also dissociated quite a lot from my emotions. I had a boyfriend when I was 21 who I loved so very much. And when we broke up, I shut down. I didn't allow myself to feel anything. I was really busy with work. I stayed busy with work, really busy with my social life, and refused to allow myself to feel anything. But I know that that breakup really affected me because it took about 2 years for me to feel like I was ready to even go on a date with someone and open up to someone else. I avoided opening up emotionally, but because I wanted to connect, the most that I could do was open up physically. I mistook sex for intimacy. There's a psychologist that I love and I follow on YouTube. His name is Tim Fletcher, and he calls this a haunting fear of abandonment. Yes, I had this fear that if I got into a relationship, I would end up being abandoned. One of the solutions that Tim Fletcher has is to learn to open up to emotional intimacy first before the physical, which I'm very proud to say in my 40s, that is where I'm at. I share this personal story as an example of the experiences that form certain stories that we carry out in our lives. My story was that all relationships end up in pain. And this story influenced my actions, my expectations, and my reactions. I couldn't trust because I expected every guy to hurt my feelings. I was very comfortable with long distance relationships because this is how I protected myself from experiencing this pain. And I used sex as intimacy because it created this illusion of connecting and being close to someone without having to open up emotionally and give them access to hurting me. Children show us who we were and who we could be if we can only get rid of the programming. From working with kids, I got to go back in time through my emotions and look at my younger self and remember what that innocent, pure young girl felt, the expectations that she had of the world. And I got to not only understand these stories, but to unravel them and the actions that I was using to defend myself. When my family went through that traumatic experience, we never had therapy as a family. We never had therapy as kids. So to any parent, if your child is going through anything traumatic, please sit down and try and understand how they're feeling. Try get them into therapy. Sometimes it's not always the best thing for parents to be the ones talking to their kids, but give them the opportunity to sit down with someone and work through those feelings. Kids have so many feelings that are so hard to articulate, and it doesn't have to be an experience as extreme as parents going through a divorce. Being teased at school, feeling like you don't fit in is a traumatic experience. As for us adults, we are only effective as parents the more healed that we are. When I discovered teaching and discovered this purpose of working with kids, I thought I was done. I was done with adults. I didn't have to go into offices and deal with adults all day. I got to be with kids who were so loving and pure. But as time went on, I realized that for me to be a great co-parent to you guys, I had to talk to you about how we are as adults. I share this story for you to be more observant of your children, but to also be more observant of yourselves and what's happening inside. If my story resonated with you and you want to share in the comments a story that you told yourself when you were young and the actions and responses that it prompted in you, please do. I would love to read your stories. My name is Miss O. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.